There's changes ahead, we know this. Regulation will change the very shape of our sector. It will change the role of the trade associations. Public perception of funerals has changed. The rise of direct cremation and also where people are going to access information about funeral services in their area has changed. It's about kind of assisting independent funeral directors to get there first, to make sure their website is up to scratch, it's mobile optimised. They're looking at pay-per-click, they're really utilising social media. Make sure that, mum and dad owned funeral directors have got a shot in the future. If you're not kind of presenting yourself in the best possible way in your community, no matter what you're doing, whether you're at church or shopping, or there is a fear that they will lose.
Welcome to the podcast, Death, a Changing Industry. Today with a great pleasure to welcome the SAIF President, Declan Maguire. Declan, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Delighted to be here.
Great to talk to you and to learn about you and your vision and your role as President of SAIF. So I'm really interested in SAIF then, because growing up, I'm from an independent family funeral service. So SAIF then, could you go through and talk about what the actual mission statement is? What is the goal? What is the purpose of SAIF?
Yeah, it's a good question. Essentially, SAIF was founded to protect the interests of the independent sector. And that's very much, I think that's an easy summary of what it does. Essentially, it kind of supports in a business sense. It provides advocacy in terms of representation to government, as NEFD does as well. Yeah. And I think that is probably key in that there's changes ahead, we know this. Regulation will change the very shape of our sector. It will change the role of the trade associations as well. And I think that SAIF's kind of drilled down kind of look at this is there are so many, I think it's over 64% of funerals in the UK, that's off the top of my head, but are served by independent family funeral directors. And yet, because of the change in terms of digital marketing and in terms of, we've seen a new market entrant in the last 5 or 6 years who has really come in and taken up the majority of funeral plans being sold at the moment. And there's not really an easy way for independents to compete in terms of budget and reach. And there is a fear that they will lose, and not because they're not brilliant at what they do, not because they're not really fantastic with the families and their care of the deceased is a priority for the business. It's just because someone else got there first. Yeah. And that is why, over the last three years now, we started a program called SAIF Digital, and that is really specifically designed to educate independent funeral directors how to compete on that level. Yeah. Because we all know that the public perception of funerals has changed. And I think I saw you talk on this a while ago, and how obviously the rise of direct cremation and also where people are going to access information about funeral services in their area has changed completely. Yeah. And there's a term we use, I've written about it, it's called floating funerals. And essentially, it's a bit like the concept of a floating voter. Until the time comes, they don't have someone in mind. And it's about kind of assisting independent funeral directors to get there first, to make sure their website is up to scratch, it's mobile optimised. They're looking at pay-per-click, they're really utilising social media in the best possible way that they can. That's all kind of built into really what SAIF's about, is making sure that it's not just there to represent and talk to government or to inspect on standards. There is a business support element to it that makes sure that mum and dad owned funeral directors, we've got a shot in the future.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the industry was sort of built on the likes of our families, my great-granddad doing funerals alongside carpentry. And they're not experts in marketing. But unfortunately now, like what you just said there, we need to have our voices heard because things are changing. Yeah. And people can disagree with how marketing is done around funerals. My granddad would have been against our family funeral service having a front shop, a front entrance. Right. Wow. Because his belief was like, they know where we are. Yeah. It's not about being, it's like a good referee. You're there, you're not seen, but they know where we are. Yeah. And that's a lovely view to have, and it's a great view to have, but unfortunately the environment has changed around us.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not about becoming, diluting your service in how you sort of do present yourself, but it's making sure you present yourself in the correct manner.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that we have seen some really interesting examples of probably people taking it too far, and damaging your own brand. And that can be done in a number of ways. That could be about oversharing, which we have definitely seen on the likes of TikTok and other things, and that's been detrimental to the business. And I think initially there's obviously a significant focus on price across the UK, and that in itself can work for you, and it can also work against you. It just depends on how the tone that you use and the approach that you take. And we've seen this over, we actively monitor probably about 400 independent funeral directors at the moment, just watching and seeing what's working, what kind of responses they're getting in terms of digital marketing, and getting that reach and getting that message out there, because you do have to. I think off the top of my head, there is one member of SAIF who has a justifiable reason not to have a website, and we only discovered this because we were going through and monitoring and having a look, and they had no website, and it's because they are actually the only funeral director on the island. So there was no requirement, but they're the only one. Everyone else really has to engage, because if it was a case where location was everything, and it's still important, but the fact that someone can see an advertisement on television from a company that is so remote and pick up the phone and book it in, it changes everything. So you do have to be much more proactive in your marketing, both in a community sense, which typically funeral directors are, but also in a digital sense as well. It's really, really important.
With that though, could you argue the fact that they're the only funeral firm on the islands, do they still have a responsibility to provide their information?
It's interesting. Yeah, I did recall this conversation because it's the one time I had no comeback. I thought, I've got nothing to say. I understand they are now running a Facebook account, which is good. And I think they're posting funeral notices on the Facebook account, which is, you know, I think that's a very good way to use it and to make sure they keep connected with people. But yeah, it must be a unique situation to be in.
It's interesting. And it's not to say, you know, you and I are the generation where online, we understand it. But then, you know, our dads, would they, you know, my dad, when we launched our website 2012, he told me it wasn't needed. Because everyone knew who we were. And about 3 days later, we received a phone call from someone, I think in the south of England, inquiring about an ashes casket.
There you go.
So I just smiled at him very quietly.
True,
But the point, so the point is though that it's about access, and with the CMA, about how we present the information, so it is transparent. So it's an interesting one. The point I'm trying to make is, do they need a website? That's my question. Should they be required to have one?
I don't think. Well, the CMA order doesn't require you to have one. It says if you do have a website, you should have your SPL up there. I mean, I think it's just common sense to have it, because there's so much functionality you can have integrated into a website. Of course, now it has to be mobile optimized. I think there's still a generation of people who think website and they see that square and you go, it's actually not, it's now that size. And that's how you need to present your information, because I think there was a review we did the other day. I think it was one funeral director had 78% of people were looking at his website on a phone, on a smartphone. So I do think so. I think you can expand upon your services and the products that you also sell as well. As you said, someone, you know, from another part of the country contacted you about an ashes casket that they may have seen and liked on a Google image search. You know, so there's so many routes that people can find you. It's just making sure that you're building up that SEO. But I'd always say, absolutely, you've got to have a website. It's almost now a basic requirement for a funeral business.
It's interesting. It's very interesting, because I can hear some people now watching this going, "Well, I want one."
Well, I know, but they're so easy to build. You can now build one on your mobile phone. You know, it's. I mean, there was one gentleman. He's actually not a member of any trade association, and he was having a bit of a go. And I said, "Well, look, you know, this is really straightforward. I mean, for probably about £14 a month, You know, you can host a website and you can build it and you can do it yourself. And before you know it, he's off built his own website now. It needed a bit of work, colour schemes and things, you know, there's a bit of brand continuity, but of course he's now taken that up. And when I think you realise it's not the way it used to be when you need to go and spend outrageous amounts of money building something. If you really want ownership of it, there's great templates out there. There's, you know, there's so many different. Squarespace is a fantastic example. Go and pick it in. You can have a website up and running in 10 minutes. And look around and see what other people are doing. If somebody's doing something well, don't start fresh. Look at how they're doing it.
Works.
It works. So, but yeah, definitely always a website.
Yeah. And so your role then, really interested. You know, I think it's clear about the importance of what you're doing. But for you personally, what does it mean to become SAIF president? And obviously you're with your dad as well, being previous NEFD president, your partner BIE. What does it mean to you, and also what do you want to achieve in your sort of term?
Do you know what, I don't think I'll realise what it means to me until I've finished. I don't think, I remember sitting the day before and I think I was trying to analyse, okay, you know, that it felt like it happened very quick, and everybody says that. Everyone says, and you can tell me now, the lead up's quick, but the year is quicker. And I always found that to be an interesting reflection on it. But before I knew it, it was the day before, and I recall chatting with Barbara about it. I said, it's an odd feeling. It was an odd feeling of nothingness, and I know that sounds really strange, but there was, I was very aware of what was to come, and obviously Hull had happened. There was like a lot of things changing, but I think it was just a case of get on with it. You know, let's get. It was almost like, you know, can we get this done and let's move on and get things going. So, but in terms of what I wanted to achieve, I think I've been really fortunate, and I say that genuinely, really fortunate to have been asked to be involved with a lot of different ongoing projects that have taken a number of years and continue. And I really didn't have any ambition for them to come to a conclusion in my year. You know, some people say that and they go, I want to get this done in my year. I think you're really investing in who's coming next. And I think you have to do that, is that don't rush something, you know, for the sake of doing it. That's a crazy thing to do. You really need to go, well, is this going to take 5 years? Well, if it's going to take 5 years, we better start today, you know, and let's get working on it. So I do always think that, and I've always said that in any discussion, is that, you know, you really are building this for the next generation, because this is not, there's no conclusion to what SAIF and NEFD do. You know, we're going to be around for many years to come, and representing and competing, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think, you know, both improve their value to the membership by competing, and you see it, you do see it. So, you know, invest today for what potentially might come in the years to come. So, if anything, I think I would like to, there's 1 or 2 wee projects that I would like to kind of to get tied up or finished up, but if it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we've got a great first and second vice who can take them on and lead them. With that being said, I'm still be around.
I'm about to say, you're still there anyway. It's like with the bereavement awareness in schools, that was started just before I became president, and 2.5 years on, I'm still, it's still there, banging the drums. So much, well, we are getting close to that now.
And it's doing great. I get my updates on all social media every time I open up, which is amazing. And I mean, I'm curious, did you feel you wanted to get things done in your year, or did...
I was aware that the year as president of NEFD gave me a platform to have that conversation at a higher level, and it became a sort of a vehicle and tool to unite as well, unintentionally. So yeah, I was aware that it gave me a profile for 12 months, and actually, like to say, it's continued on now, and hopefully that comes to a conclusion soon. I mean, the debate was booked 17th of June, with the election that's been postponed, waiting for a new date to be announced now. So hopefully, when this has been released, we're going to be going down to Parliament again. So it's very close. It's in the RSE guidance notes, and it's been a fascinating time. Fascinating
Yeah,
time.
I bet every time I see an update, it just seems it's a little bit further forward. But I remember that morning when I saw the post where they'd announced the debate on it.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I was so pleased for you. You know, just to think about the amount of work that had been put in, particularly during your year, and everything else, and the number of likes you got on it and comments as well was fabulous. So it was, but yeah, I think I would agree with you. I think there's a platform there. There's an opportunity to kind of highlight certain things and bring them forward. That being said, there is an incoming generation of people who are really dynamic and kind of you know, tech savvy, ridiculously. They are digital natives. You know, I think I cross between the digital analog, which allows me to translate from one to the other reasonably well. But then you've got this next generation coming in who just know it. That's just how things work. And
it's part of them, isn't it? Now?
It is. No, it is, absolutely is. I mean, the fact that coding has been taught to such a level in schools now just terrifies the life out of me. You think, gosh, you know, they're coming in fast, which is no bad thing. But at the same time, we've got a lot of those kind of people coming through across the funeral profession, and it's lovely to see.
Yeah,
it really is.
It is good. Looking back to, obviously you've been around this industry, you had time away, but actually it's part of who you are because of like your family and your involvement in Scotland. What changes have you seen from, you know, you being a young person going on a Saturday, helping clean the cars, make the coffin, do the coffin linings, to where you're at now? What change do you think we have seen in society and in funerals in that time? Yeah,
I mean, that's a brilliant question. Do you know what's interesting is if I think back to when I left, so that was probably about 2002, and I came back in 2017, I can't remember, but it was about 17, 18 years. There was very little change in that time.
Yeah.
And that's what really fascinated me the most in terms of regulation, for one. I genuinely, because I had no connection with the funeral industry at all during that period. And in terms of consumer trends, you know, again, it really hadn't changed much. There was little things you could see, little preferences, and a bit more choice available. A little bit, but not. If I was to take, and I think probably looking at an observation of consumer behaviours in other areas and how much those have changed over time and how much digitisation had come in to other sectors, that was in no way matched in the funeral. It just wasn't. Funerals was really hadn't gone that far at all. Okay, you had an evolution of vehicles, you had little things, but the core of the funeral was still the same. Increase in cremations, that was always going to happen over time, but nothing really had fundamentally changed. And the cremation was more of a slow change, I'd say. Yeah, it was very gradual. It was very gradual. And I think you can correlate that with changes in religious observance. It tends to... But even religion changes, that change from religious to non-religious, which is happening from the census, that's been a slow change as well over time, not a drastic change like we've seen in the last... Yeah, I would agree. It will... I think it's hard. We obviously do quite a bit of analysis and research and try to understand where things are going to go. I would say that you know, things do come, you know, they kind of go to an extreme slightly and then come back a wee bit. So it's going to be an interesting journey, probably over the next 10 years. But I will say, you know, having been away for so long and come back and thinking nothing's changed, and then from that point forward, everything has changed. You know, and as we talked about, the change in the consumer behaviour in terms of their trust levels of information about funeral directors online has increased massively, where they're actually trusting information that they find online about funerals, about funeral directors, funeral plans. And also, what I love the most is how personalisation has come into funerals, because there is nothing better, I think, than when a family has a request that really makes a funeral unique. It's lovely to see or hear, and again, I check out how everyone's doing on social media all the time just to see, well, what interesting funeral have they done today. One of my favourites, and she's very, very good at posting things up and I think giving families choice. A funeral director in, I'm trying to think where she's based, I can't remember now, Derby, I think. And she was wearing a Star Trek outfit conducting a funeral, and I loved that.
What's her name?
Inez Caps.
Okay,
Isn't it? Yeah. So, and she has a great TikTok account, and she knows what the line is as well in terms of content, which is fantastic.
And important as well.
It is very important. Yeah. She's she really presents it very, very well, and she's I think last time I checked, probably 84,000 followers. Wow. Which is good going. But what I love is when, you know, she posts something up and it's like a pink top hat, or it's just about the Star Trek outfit. It was fabulous. Yeah. And I just thought to myself that it would be nice if that's where things were going. If we got to that level. Now, again, you've got this other change into direct cremation that is nothingness almost. It's kind of that's that part.
Detached.
And it is very detached. It is. And I think we've got to wait to see probably the outcomes from that in terms of, and I know obviously grief is a big part of your work as well, is I know I couldn't do a direct cremation. I just know myself, for family members, it would not fulfill probably the cultural expectations, because that's a part of a funeral as well, is what's the expectation for us to arrange this funeral. But there's a comfort in that as well, is that we've observed something of our, you know, my culture or our culture in that. So, but yeah, I think we're going to see definitely more personalisation. I would see that increasing. Direct cremation, the jury's still out on where that's going to rest at. Yeah. I don't think we're too far away. But certainly, I think if, you know, the family that we serve feels that they have got the farewell that they wanted, and if that involves, you know, an observation of the personalisation and value and all the other key attributes, then we're doing our job properly.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think what we've seen, the interview I did with Katie Costello, who's a death doula, midwife and funeral celebrant, she'd spoke about direct cremations and the level of detachment and disconnect. And a lot of the comments on the podcasts, on one of the social media posts, a lot of people were saying that they had direct cremation and now they don't feel like they had opportunity to say goodbye.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's, again, back to the work around grief. Once we understand emotions we go through when someone dies, we understand the need of a funeral. I think what you're saying is we need to look at what is a funeral. Yeah. Which is really interesting and actually really exciting where that goes. Yeah. Hey guys, thank you for watching the video so far. I hope you're really enjoying it. Please click the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, a huge thank you to our sponsors. Their details are found in the video description just below. Thank you so much.
I mean, I think you've nailed it in the head there. It's well, what is a funeral? What are the constituent parts that need to be in place in order to give you the fulfilment that you need? Yeah. I mean, there's a great example. I enjoyed this one very much. I'm quite happy with the cremation. That for me is okay. And I was told in no uncertain terms, stepkids told Barbara and I, that's not happening. You're getting buried. This is where you're going to get buried. We want somewhere to visit. Yeah. And I thought, wow, for that generation, late teens, early 20s, to say, no, we're holding on to this. This is what's important for us. This is what we want. And I do have to think about it and go, it's not about me, is it? Not really. That's the question then. Who is the funeral service for? Yeah, it's for the family. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting question to ask everyone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To have a funeral for me, it's too much trouble for you. I don't want to upset you. Yeah. Well, actually, sometimes being upset is important. Yeah. Difficult things are important. We keep having that conversation on this podcast. Yeah. When we avoid stuff, issues will follow at later points. You can't avoid it. No. Yeah, often the way, absolutely. With the changes that we face, the things that are going on in society, how do you think that funeral directors are perceived and how they are seen? And do you think that funeral directors are respected in communities across the UK? Yeah, I do. I definitely do. And all the research shows that as well, that the trust levels for funeral directors, and I'm going to say independent family-owned funeral directors, of course is high, and it is high. And I think there's, with all the digitisation that's going on, they still have that face-to-face connection with people in their community that cannot be replaced by a Google pay-per-click ad. It just can't. And I think, you know, that is ultimately the strength of a locally owned business, is that you know their name. You see them in the shops, they're part of the community, they're connected. It's someone that is in your community, it's someone that's probably known the person who's passed away, and you know that person, they've looked after it. That funeral, it's I think that keeps it naturally high, the trust and respect levels. And I think people also understand it's not an easy job. No. It's not. You know, there is a recruitment challenge in funerals, and that is, and interestingly, not just here in the UK, that is a bit of a global issue. We know this. If you read, and I know you follow a lot of overseas podcasts and literature on this, it is a problem. And you do have to have a mentality to work in this business. You absolutely do. So, and I think people understand that. I think they do. I think they get that. You know, being a 24-hour kind of business, and also the fact is you're always on call. Even if you're not on call, technically you're on call, whether you're down at Asda shopping or 100%. You are always 100%. You know, your behaviour and people's perception of you will dictate the future success of your business. Yeah. You know, so if you're not kind of presenting yourself in the best possible way in your community, no matter what you're doing, whether you're at church or shopping or you know, it's not going to, people aren't going to trust you, and so overwhelmingly, yeah, I would say. Well,
it's not a job, is it? That's the bottom line.
It's not,
like,
no.
It's and actually what we do is like, it should be who we are, like you said, when you're doing your shopping. Yeah. And that's not a front, that's not being false, it's just who we are.
Yeah,
so that's really, that's an important thing to be aware of.
It is, it definitely is, and I think, it is quite interesting when people, there's an interesting public perception of a dour character, which we know not to be the case.
100%.
You know, I often think, especially when we go to education events or meetings, and some of the greatest characters in life can be found in the funeral profession because they are genuinely interesting people with a remarkable experience in life, you know, really have seen things and been challenged by things. So there's a natural resilience to people who make this a career, a lifelong kind of commitment to doing this. So, but overall, yeah, absolutely. And recent kind of research has definitely shown trust levels, despite what happened earlier this year, they're very high, and so they should be.
Yeah, they should be. And like what's happened in Hull, I think it's really important to state that's a legal activity. So like, you know, that is criminal activity, which, like you said, is extreme. It's an extreme circumstance and a contained and controlled situation. Yeah. So I'm really interested then, because you mentioned during that question, or that answer to that question about independence, and I saw your smile on your face. I have gained so much from NEFD working with large corporates, CEOs, area managers. Does SAIF recognise that there is something to gain from working with larger corporate companies, or is it completely a no-go?
I think, well, membership is a no-go. It is for, I mean, the definition at SAIF is for independently owned funeral directors. So I think in terms of its activity and its output, it is very much about helping those members. Yeah. And that's what it was formed to do. That's what it continues to do. But in terms of, I mean, I think there are a lot of large independent people. The other thing that's quite interesting is there's a lot of people who have worked outside the sector as well, who have come in some way in relation to the family business and have intersected with what's going on. So I think a couple of people have probably in the past have said to me, oh, it's all small, and you're thinking, actually, no, there's a lot of people who've, really impressive people who are kind of coming up and getting involved in committees, who have got high-level corporate experience and are kind of bringing that and channeling it in to an understanding. So from a kind of a sector perspective, as it were, there's diversity of skill sets and experience in there as well. But I think the most important place for SAIF and corporates within NEFD to work together is undoubtedly what's going on at the minute, which is obviously the kind of landmark agreement on the code of practice, which was much needed. I was delighted to see the response at NEFD when Barry announced it.
Yep.
A round of applause in the room, which was I didn't really had no kind of idea of how it would go, but I was there at the back as a dual member, and I was delighted to see that, because I think we've all wanted progress on this topic. It's just sometimes there's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of kind of outside issues, and there's lots of people involved, and sometimes
noise. A lot of noise.
Yeah, a lot of noise. Sometimes you need to cut through it and go, look, you know, there is a code. It has been researched for 7 years. We've all consulted on it, and that was a big step forward. And I think that has almost laid a platform for us to go, right, okay, what's the next step, and where do we go? What do we need to do from here? Ultimately, regulation is in the hands of government. There's, you know, we really have, as the two trade associations for businesses in the UK, we have done as much as we can with that legislation to back it up. I mean, if you think about how many inspections have been done, you know, over a number of years, you know, it's absolutely incredible the amount of time and effort and how much passion has been poured into creating programs, primarily by volunteers as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't think sometimes people realise the executives is not a paid position. These are all, you know, people who are giving their time. All the people in the subcommittees are giving their time out of love and commitment for this. So, yes, it's. I think we're definitely working together in the right space right now, and certainly the outcome from the codes has been fantastic. I'm really excited to see it, and that's across everyone. I don't think that there was any negative comments on that whatsoever, because we keep an eye on social media just to go, what's the response.
But it still requires the right people at the right time to ensure that happens.
I'd agree.
And what's really interesting is our next podcast will be with yourself and past President Barry Pritchard, who really has really pushed that through. And like you say, I know it's a team, and I'll be very supportive of Barry over this as well, but it still requires the right people. So that'll be really an interesting conversation to watch after this with you.
Definitely.
That's really interesting. And that moment as well at conference when that was announced, it was a moment, and I felt an element of relief. Like, finally. Yeah. Thank goodness we're finally there. So
I'd agree with you. I think even knowing it was coming still didn't take away from the moment at all. And I'm trying to think, I went back to report on that. Of course, by the time I went back to our executive to report on that and to other people, they already knew. It had got round.
It was a moment.
It was, and that was fantastic. And I think at the table, I had come in and sat down, and I was at a table at the kind of back of the room, and it was to hear the gasps at the table. It was like, where did this come from? You know, it was great. It was great, and I think it was mainly associates, but they all said the same thing. Oh, finally, you know, about time. You know, so
about time, but I still believe also it's about timing. So interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really interested as well to your motivation. What motivates you? What inspires you to continue doing what you're doing? And also your dad. I'm fascinated to know about what he thinks about you taking on this national role. You said that he's very proud, and he sort of encouraged you to do it.
Yeah, he did. I can tell you the quote on that one. So I did. I thought I spoke to Barbara about it, and I think Barbara's take was fantastic, because having done it so recently and being very aware of all the things there, was very, very supportive and understanding, I think, of you know, what we were kind of working on and what we were trying to achieve.
Realistic.
Absolutely. I mean, we do talk a lot about the funeral profession, the two of us at night over dinner. You know, we'll kind of go, what do you think about this? And it's lovely, and then we go off and watch Love Island or something. But it's actually lovely to be able to share, you know, questions and puzzles and challenges, and someone would say to me, you know, you only come up with good ideas, and that's not true. I come up with some terrible ones, but Barbara filters them out, which is quite good. So she's a great person to work with to kind of sense check things, and it's very enjoyable. But I did ask Dad, and now I can't remember how many years ago it was. I remember him doing it, and I recall him being away a lot There was a lot to do, a lot of meetings and events and banquets and things, and so I had a very clear understanding of the potential workload involved. But his comment was short and sweet. He said, "Yeah, you'll love it. It'll be great fun. Go do it."
Yeah,
that was it.
Straightforward.
And I thought, okay, fair enough.
Is he proud of what you're doing?
Yeah. I think he came to AGM, which was nice, and to the Sunday presentation, which was lovely. And Barry, and that was quite a nice moment, I have to say. It was very, very good of Barry to do it. Barry gave Dad his chain for a photograph.
Nice.
And that was a lovely moment. That was really nice. It might not have been the same organisation, but the thought was there. It's about making it good. And there is an element, I think, sometimes, and I hope it's not a misperception of SAIF, is it's all just about independence. There is an observance of the greater good.
This is it.
Yeah, and I think that maybe we could clarify a little bit more in our communications, but I hope that comes through in all the work and the announcement with the code, is that it's not just about us alone. Everything we're doing in terms of regulation, yes, we are protecting the independent sector, but at the same time, it has to work for everyone, and it has to work for the consumer at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that's made clear in a lot of our kind of work, particularly over the last 4 or 5 months.
So, as I mentioned as well, what inspires you and what motivates you to carry out your role and be the person that you are?
Yeah, great question. I think that I'm finding that out as I go along.
Yeah.
I think I am intrigued by puzzles and challenges, and things I said earlier, I'm not as motivated in maintenance. I don't think I could do the same thing for the rest of my life. I think I'd find that quite challenging. I need diversity. I need there to be learning on that journey as well, because if you're not learning anything, the brain's not really growing and it's not getting excited.
Yeah.
And I definitely think I'm learning more about myself as I go along, which is really nice in terms of, why did I get excited about that crazy project that has no chance of success or minimal chance of success, but the easy goal, I'm just like, I'm not really...
I would say, if I can just jump in here, I would say that you welcome challenge almost.
Yeah,
you thrive under the pressure of a challenge.
Yes, I would. I think I enjoy when someone says it can't be done, to a certain extent. I'm not. Yeah, if it clearly can't be done, there's no point in touching it. But I do. I think I enjoy working with people. I really do, and I love. I've got all these little likes in life, particularly technology. I've always been quite fascinated. I think I was diagnosed as dyslexic when I was 8 or 9.
Okay.
And there was an opportunity to kind of integrate technology into my exams and learning by having a keyboard. And ever since that day, I've just been, if there's a new app coming out, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does this do? How does it work? How is it built? How can that be applied to something? There's a problem over here. Can we use this to fix it? And how can we integrate it with something else? And that has been, now I think about it, is oddly kind of a part of a lot of the things I do. So at SAIF, I think I really feel sorry for Terry, our chief exec, in the business centre, because I have thrown so many apps at them and gone, look at this one does, and you have to be balanced in kind of going, you can't app everything, you can't digitise everything, but they've been very patient with me and taking them on board. But so there's, I think, a little bit of something new, something challenging, and very much people as well. Enjoy kind of getting involved with different groups of people and understanding the mechanisms of how everything works. But that must be why I'm still doing this now.
No, it's really fascinating. It's about people, challenge, and I'll be really interested to get your thoughts on if you were to tell was it 8 when you found out you had dyslexia? I
think it was about 8 or 9. Yeah.
If you had to go back and tell him now about you were going to become SAIF president and do the things that you've done. The boy that just received his computer to help him do his exams.
Sure enough,
he was probably questioning, am I going to be okay? And all this, there's initial panic. Or know what he would say. I
don't know. That's a brilliant question. Where'd you get that? I'm going to have to ponder that one. I don't know. I don't know. I think probably a bit of excitement. I think back then I was very shy. I was a very, very shy kid, and I think there wasn't a lot of availability of support. In fact, I think in my school I was the first official dyslexic, which was quite interesting because it was a very old-fashioned school. But I think probably the biggest challenge that I found with that to overcome was I've learned now it's not a disability as such. It's actually just a change in the way you learn.
Completely.
And actually, if you figure out, and this is probably one of the great things with the concept of modern learning and modern education being digitised or being changed in how it's presented. Rote learning doesn't work for me. I knew that from day one. But kind of experiential learning really does, because I'll pick it up in seconds, whereas I could spend 10 hours on this and just go, that's not going to work. So I think if I could go back and I could tell myself anything, it would be going, don't do it that way, do it this way, do it this way, and make your life a lot easier. And then I would have been a very happy 8, 9-year-old. But yeah. It took me a long time to learn that one.
Fantastic. Well, you're there now, aren't you?
Yeah,
so, yeah, and the challenges are what define us and how we come through the challenges. So
absolutely. Yeah.
You've certainly done that as well. So, Declan, thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be here.
It's been fascinating to learn about you, about the work that you're doing at SAIF, and also what SAIF, what are the goals there, what it stands for. Because it's really helped me understand what it is as well. So, thank you for your time, and I look forward to count the podcast with yourself and Barry on the next one as well. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Nice one. Thanks, John.
Hey guys, a big thank you for watching our episode with Declan Maguire, who is the SAIF president. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, a big thank you to our sponsors. Finally, the interview with Katie Costello is just here. Please click through to give that a watch.